Okay, this is another video. I'm not going to make it very long, but it's about a person, a liberal asshole, who it was announced this month by Conservative Tribune and a number of other conservative leading papers that Howard Schultz, who's the chairman or CEO of Starbucks, is stepping down and resigning, and they tried to make it look like it was a result of his liberal policies, including his crazy vow to hire 10,000 refugees and whatever. And now they're trying to go after veterans. It's a ridiculous statement. It was made basically. Here's the problem: that both sides are sort of wrong on this, and I'm going to talk about my own personal views on Schultz in a minute, or as soon as I get done with this. First of all, the Conservative Tribune got it wrong, and so did the conservative critics of Howard Schultz, because he was planning to retire as far back as December. He announced it. So it's not really related to all these retarded policies that he's been trying to put forward. But why does he deserve to be made fun of? This is a person who made that goal. He stated that goal knowing that he's on his way out the door. And I think it's almost a given, and I'm not going to hold myself to it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Starbucks flip-flopped on his promise once he leaves officially and say that, you know, conditions have changed, we can't hire 10,000 refugees or illegal immigrants, or they made a number of just frivolous promises. First of all, you can't hire in a restaurant or cafe like that. They could incur a lot of problems just by hiring illegal immigrants. For one thing, it's a federal crime. So, you know, there's people who are sitting in prison. I know, for example, of Shalom Rabashkin, is very famous in the Jewish community. He's sitting in prison partly because he employed so many illegal immigrants. A lot of people say it was wrong to put him in prison. A lot of people say that, you know, he got what he deserved. I'm not going to take a stand on that. It's not really my expertise, his case. I mean, he is sitting in prison, and, you know, I guess he has it hard enough without me talking about it. And he didn't really do anything egregious so far as I saw in terms of an immoral crime. But Howard Schultz, that was a funny way of him basically making a meaningless gesture while you know, knowing that he's going to leave the office of CEO. There's no way for Starbucks to be held accountable from now on, because as of April 30, he's going to be out of office. He's going to be gone. The next CEO can basically say, yeah, you know, this isn't a great idea, and it isn't a great idea. Look, Starbucks grew in America. It grew in Seattle. It was a major chain that I think at the turn of the millennium, it became such a huge trend. Everybody was talking about there's a Starbucks everywhere. You couldn't even turn around to take a dump, and you'd be like pooping on a Starbucks. That's the way it was. There's the famous Lewis Black routine where he says that he's walking down the street and he sees one Starbucks, and then this was the point of the destruction of the universe or something, that the universe, the space-time continuum exploded, because across from that Starbucks was another Starbucks. So I thought it was hilarious when I heard it. Obviously, I just ruined the joke for anybody that didn't, but that it was a cultural meme at the time that Starbucks was becoming ubiquitous, just like Phil Collins in the 80s. That's what Starbucks was. And Howard Schultz it's admirable that he did that. And then after that, he totally shat the bed He bought, and this is why I hate Howard Schultz. It has nothing to do with his politics, which are also pretty retarded. But there's a lot of rich people that you could say they have politics that makes no sense, and they're, you know, from Mark Cuban to Richard Branson to Rupert Murdoch, George Soros. You know, rich people have ridiculous politics. Look, our president is a billionaire. You know, he came into politics. He said, you know, I'm rich. I can tell people what to do. That's the way it is. But Howard Schultz is worse. And in my opinion, Howard Schultz, if he were, and people are trying to think, is he going to run for office or something? I think if he was to run to office, it would be a disaster for him. And I'm not saying that because I'm like anti him or because I'm discounting him like a lot of people discounted Donald Trump. Howard Schultz is a public relations nightmare in many parts of the Northwest. If you read and look at the history of his presence there, it's not nearly as popular as people would think. He owned the Seattle Supersonics. He was the person responsible for leading them into a period of mediocrity in the mid-2000s, and eventually he had to sell the team and they moved. And he sold them under the understanding to the public that he would somehow keep the team in Seattle. If you want to watch this, you don't even have to read. If you want to watch a movie that's a very engaging and well-made independent movie about it, you can look on YouTube. It's called Sonicsgate. It was amazing. And it details how poorly he managed the team and how he had this negotiation with this Oklahoma investor named Clay Bennett, who facetiously claimed that he would keep the team in Austin and then moved it to Oklahoma City, which is, as we now know, they're the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'll never understand why we have a team in Oklahoma City. Nothing against Oklahoma, but, you know, between Seattle and Oklahoma City, I know which one deserves a team more. So then he basically fleeced an entire fan base, and it's the same sort of hypocrisy and lack of accountability that the plutocrats, the people that are they're supposedly saying I'm a captain of society, of industry. I'm gonna lead our country. And I'm talking about also on the conservative side. There's people like that too. But if you think about it, a lot of these liberal billionaires like Howard Schultz, they are liberal as long as they are controlling as long as it's out of their control. Once something is in their control, they're just as dictatorial as any third world dictator, or even if you want to be more even-handed, they're as dictatorial as the right's image as the left's image of the right, namely these Christian fanatics, what are they called? Focus on the family people, people that are, it's our way or the highway. That's the way they are with their businesses. The rich liberal people, they behave typically in even worse fashion than the rich conservatives, and they just pretend that they can do whatever they want in their private life because it's their business, they built it. But everybody else should follow a different set of rules. Everybody else should agree to higher taxes, to Common Core, to Obamacare, as Warren Buffett did. Warren Buffett backed Obama in all of his retarded policies because Warren Buffett can afford to absorb any repercussions from those policies. The average small business can't. So therefore, if he finds a business that's moderately profitable but is seeing threats from regulations and from tax policies, Warren Buffett can come in there and say, "Hey, I'm from Berkshire Hathaway. I can buy your business, and I can take it over and take it further." And that's the way they do it. And I'm not against Warren Buffett. I think he's a fine businessman, but he doesn't know, his politics are completely hypocritical. There's nothing genuine about them. Howard Schultz is worse because Howard Schultz is somebody who will make a gesture that he claims is going to bring the community together, and it ends up totally blowing up in his face. It was the same thing when he bought the Sonics. People thought, oh, this Starbucks CEO, he's going to really make our team great again. It didn't do anything. In fact, he was probably, you know, he was the owner that was instrumental in running the team into the ground and making it ripe for relocation to Oklahoma City. Then, and that's beyond the issues of sports and how it's not really equal, and fans are getting screwed, and the cities are getting screwed, and non-fans are getting screwed that live in the city that pay for the stadium taxes. That's the problem with people like Howard Schultz. And that's the typical sports owner. A lot of these sports owners are publicly liberal, but they run their team as if they are basically John D. Rockefeller, which they are technically. You could look at I mean, who's the best example? You have this Paul Allen. I think he owns the Blazers. There's Steve Ballmer. He owns the Clippers now. These are guys that they're just typical liberal CEOs and billionaires, and they just, you know, they'll own these teams, and, you know, they're all about looking dynamic and whatever in public. In reality, they're behaving like billionaires. They don't know how to think any way else. Howard Schultz had this stupid campaign. I think it was either in 2016 or 2015, where Starbucks was selling coffee with these cups that said, "Please take a minute to talk with your barista about a honest conversation about race," or something like that degree. I'll post the link. And it was one of the dumbest SJW fails of all time. And this is what was so pathetic, was that this guy thought by being race conscious, he's going to increase his business. Well, the joke's on him. The people that actually believe in the type of crap that was on the cup are already shopping at Starbucks. So you're not really gaining any ground. You're just adding, you're not adding to your customer base. The real problem is the people that want to go to Starbucks because they need their morning coffee, or because they need to meet a friend and you know, work on something at the coffee shop, and instead of being on their merry way, the person in front of them is having a discussion about Trayvon Martin or something. It was a horrible backfire. I don't care if you think the cause is right. The cause is irrelevant if the strategy is retarded. Okay, so Howard Schultz's well-intended gestures have a long history of being failures, and this one was a failure too. And you know, I don't know if it has. Look, we don't know if Donald Trump is going to be a success or not a success. I tend to believe that he's defied our expectations time and again, so I can't count him out. What I do know is that somebody like Howard Schultz will never ever be competent to lead this country. You really have to have a vision of something concrete in order to change the United States. And Howard Schultz's entire career was based on empty gestures. It was based on nothing. Donald Trump, a lot of his things were empty gestures. He was in the USFL. That was a failure. Donald Trump is not a great person. You know, he's not. It's not like he's the greatest example of who you're supposed to be. But what you can't take away from him, and what he has an infinitely great advantage over Howard Schultz on, is that he has a strategic mind, and he knows how to he knows how to use his strengths to his advantage, and in fact, people's weaknesses against them. It doesn't always work, but we've been seeing it from time to time, especially with the Mexico trip from last year, if you remember. Anyway, so that's it. I'm glad Howard Schultz is gone. I think the guy was a disgrace to his city, and what he did to that fan base should never ever be you know, just pasted over or plastered over, whatever you call it. He resigned. The next CEO of Starbucks, I think, should go for, just keeping the company successful in the ways it's already been successful, and there's a movement away from location stores. So I don't know how they're going to deal with that, but doing it the way Howard Schultz did with the stupid cup campaign and all these initiatives, the immigrant thing and the Christmas cups and whatever. I think it's better for Starbucks that he left. And that's it. This is Ramon from Bold Like a Leopard. You can find me at Chef Leopard on Twitter, Chef Leopard on VidMe. You can also find me on Facebook.com/Chef Leopard and StartingLeopard.blogspot.com for the blog. This is Ramon, and we'll see you around the bend.